So we are on the final week of Show and Prove, and to bring you up to speed if you haven't been hanging with us all month, the context for this conversation is that spiritual truths, universal truths, personal development, however it shows up in your life, a liberatory spirit, however you work towards getting free, if it is only conceptual, if your life doesn't get better in your world, then the work isn't working. The whole idea of this is that you may have a deeper, greater, vaster experience of peace, love, joy, harmony, abundance, freedom, order. And if that is not the case, then we're living in the gap, and that's totally cool. It's just an opportunity for us to get curious what's going on over here that's having a recurring experience show up in my life. So for me, I have had times in my life where there are things on repeat. Are you familiar with something in your life that occurs on repeat? Yes. There are relationships that occur like they're on repeat, even if the face changes. There are jobs that occur like they're on repeat, even though the job title or corporation has changed. And then the question always lies, who am I being in all of this? If in fact, I am a common denominator in a set of circumstances, and I have a willingness to explore my degree of responsibility, then we got to start right here. So my experience is there are a couple of lies, I'll call them, that have to be maintained in order for us to find ourselves in repetitive, disempowering circumstances and conditions. So, many of you are familiar, if you've taken classes here, with the four kingdoms of consciousness. Four kingdoms of consciousness are states of consciousness, not stages of consciousness. You do not graduate from one to another. So the four states of consciousness, four kingdoms of consciousness, four ways of leading, could be called to me. So that would be a victim consciousness. Life is happening to me. A by me consciousness, I start to wake up to myself as a manifesting presence. Through me consciousness, I start to feel a sense of flow. I know myself as open and available. And as me consciousness, there is no difference between me and it. So the question that I'm always asking myself is, where am I? Where am I around this issue? There are four intentions that I have for today. One is to ever invite us in to an expanded experience of self-awareness. Oftentimes you've heard me say, one of my favorite teachers, Michael Beckwith, said when he visited here February 15th, 2007, have dominion over your awareness and you will have dominion over your destiny. So the extent to which I can be self-aware, which is the distinct and unique experience of humans, is the extent to which I can impact, influence, assert, create, allow the life that I desire. Would you be willing to consider giving up blame and criticism? It's very fun to maintain it. It's way easier to keep it. It is much easier to provide loads of evidence for how and why those people are doing that thing, causing you to have your experience. Perhaps it's your family of origin. Perhaps it's religious traditions. Perhaps it's the United States government. Perhaps it's fill in the blank. And then the next inquiry is, would you be willing to stop outsourcing your happiness? I will be happy when this thing happens. In fact, I can only be happy once, or I will, and here's the thing, it happens in micro moments. I will be happy when I am in my home in Oak Park as opposed to bathing my children from swimmer's itch in Lake Delavan, Wisconsin. And yet, if I cannot find joy in swimmer's itch, then there's still plenty of work to do, yes? So it's not the big things, it's the micro moments that lead up to the big moments. If you and I don't have muscle in the micro moments, forget the big game. And finally, would you be willing to consider that there's great value and great necessity in you being steadfast in your practice? That is the conversation for the month of May. There is no quick fix to show improve. It is an ongoing practice of recommitment. You make a commitment to something once, and then life shows up, and you have to recommit and recommit and recommit and recommit. Have you been married? Recommitment every moment. So let's talk about what it looks like when we're on the planet in victim consciousness. And I want you to map this onto your life and start to get curious, like, where am I experiencing victim consciousness? Is it in a boardroom? Is it in your workplace? Is it in relationship to your children? Is it in relationship to your weight? Are you at the effect of your body? Doesn't even have to be someone else. You can be at the effect of your own beingness. The lie that all of this requires is that something's not right. Something is not right. The way this happened is wrong. The person is not right. The place is not right. I am not right. And you lose your power instantly. So there's a woman named Ayanna Van Zandt. And I love following her on Twitter. She said, if you insist on staying in a place you no longer belong in, you will suffer the consequences. So it's an important nuance, because it is not that if you take 100% responsibility that life will always be easy. You can experience ease without life being easy. So life is filled with challenges. And a lot of times we have stuff that are causing sort of discomfort in our world, and it may be the nudge that you are needing to move. When we interact with life and remember that all of life is for us versus having experiences of sleepiness where it feels like life is happening against us, when we operate with curiosity and openness and wonder, like, I wonder how this challenge could be for me, then I find for me, I don't stay stuck as long. Let's see. Perhaps you're familiar with a scriptural reference. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. Now, I don't know that anybody here knows a whole lot about wineskins, but you do know about mindsets. So let me put it in a little bit of different language for you. A guy named Wayne Manning. You can't put new ideas into old mindsets. You can't get new results with old behaviors. So the title today is How to Beat the Repeat. How to beat the repeat. There's something that it may be occurring in your life, and it's on repeat. And the same you that caused and created the set of circumstances that you find yourself in that are now on repeat is not going to be the you that's required to birth the new set of circumstances and conditions. So you have to be the new mindset to call forward the new experience. You have to create the new mindset, the new behaviors to call forward the new experiences. Now, I think the thing that's happening in the consciousness of humanity is that we've been sort of playing with a conversation of personal responsibility for quite some time. But our philosophies and theologies have not been a match for the conversation of responsibility. And what I mean by that is, so long as you can outsource your happiness or your security or your safety to something outside of you, there's a place and space whereby you don't have to take responsibility. And that becomes challenging. That's where suffering exists. So imagine that the power and presence of the infinite, of the universe, of call it God, spirit, life, is right where you are. And you might be like, I know this conversation. I got it. And I would say, well, I don't think that may be the case because our planet looks such that it does. So if we really got this, the planet wouldn't look like it does. There's a guy named Ernest Holmes. He wrote a book called It's Up to You. And this is how he says it. There is nothing in the universe that limits us or that would or could desire to limit us. The idea that God is trying our souls to see whether or not we can take it, so to speak, is nonsense. It is born in ignorance, in superstition, in the nighttime of the soul, and has nothing to do with spiritual realization. There is no power in the universe that tries or tempts us but our own ignorance. Man is already defeated if he approaches life with the morbid idea that there is some power ready to deny him or to inflict punishment upon him. If you are in a repetitive experience of suffering, on some level of your being, we have to be subscribing to some external presence that is working against you. If all of life is organized for your favor, if the universe is ever giving of itself, ever expanding, then that which you are experiencing now is a former state of consciousness. But if there is a presence right where you are, then you can keep breathing into that and allowing that and trusting that every single thing that is occurring is working for your good. That is a big idea. You know, I spent many, many years in jobs always looking at what other people had with longing. Like they've figured it out. They have a job that they love. And I'm over here doing this thing that's meaningless. And I spent a lot of years without faith that I was being prepared for something. And when I started to shift my context of where I was, why I was, what I was doing, as being rightly designed for the next appointment, my whole world altered. The moment I could start walking in a consistent consciousness that life is for me, that everything is happening through me, that there isn't some paternal presence watching and critiquing my every move, holding a carrot before me if only I shall behave well enough, the moment I really deconstructed that, life got so much easier. And my great desire for humanity is that life could be experienced as available and easy, easeful, so that when challenges come along, we can take a deep breath. When conflict arises, we can breathe through it. You know, we had a conflict this morning with the organization that we rent with around the space. And I had we had a moment of disagreement on how things needed to occur here this morning. And had I been more committed to being right, the interaction would have occurred much differently. But because I was deeply committed to trusting that there's something in them that is whole and holy, and that we can rise above the present set of circumstances and conditions into a new paradigm of possibility, we emerged at a solution, and it's fine. So, it sounds very basic, but when you find yourself in discomfort, when you find yourself in dis-ease, when you find yourself in conflict, the questions that we have to ask ourselves are, who am I being? Who am I being? And what am I doing? So I would love to ask you to close your eyes for just a moment, because I want to get this out of the conceptual. It would be very easy to sit here and be like, that's such a nice message for the new people here. So take a deep breath and bring to your mind's eye an area of life that seems to present a recurring challenge. Perhaps a relationship where someone is not living up to your expectations. Perhaps a place of employment that you have a constant complaint about. Perhaps your personal finances or your physical body. What is the recurring complaint or the recurring experience that you are having? Listen for it and hold it in your mind's eye. Now, who are you being in relationship to that thing? What is your orientation? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your beliefs? You may begin to notice the mind's need to provide evidence through memories, referencing the past. All of that lives in the realm of who are you being and what are you doing? Now take a deep breath and open your eyes. I had the thought that someone may have been sitting in that experience saying to themselves, I'm not being anything wrong. Right there was. That question incites that. The question of being, what would be the body posture of being at the effect of a set of circumstances and conditions? Let me model what my body posture and typical sound might be. Something like that. Does one in you live like that? Apparently they're in the house. When I am coming from that place, very little is possible. Had I taken on that persona in relationship to this space and the leadership of this space this morning, certainly an option, felt it, very easily accessible, it would have produced a different outcome. So if we are actually interested in taking 100% responsibility for the results of our life, then we must get wildly curious in who we're being and what we're doing. Because I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, you're not at the effect of your circumstances and conditions. You're not a victim of anyone or anything, which is not to say you have not had a victim experience. That is very different. Ralph Waldo Emerson says it like this: men suffer all their life long under the foolish superstition that they can be cheated. But it is as impossible for a man to be cheated by anyone but himself. So consider that any area of life that you are struggling in that's on repeat, there's something where you are that's cheating you. There's something where you are that's holding you back. We can't have a statistic like 71% of people would leave their jobs if they could afford to. Like, that can't live as a statistic in a society that says it's committed to taking 100% responsibility. Now, I don't know that our society has said that yet, but this society has said that. So he says, it is as impossible for a man to be cheated by anyone but himself. So then I would want to get wildly curious. What am I withholding from me? What am I preventing myself from having, from experiencing, from being in some kind of sacrificial way? Well, it's just my lot in life. It's just the way it is. Is there an area of your life that you find yourself saying that? Well, it's just the way it is. Those are the parents I got. And there's sort of an apathy. Well, it's just the way it is. That's the diagnosis. You're here for more than that. There's a creative power and presence that lives within you. And my intention is the more I can wake up to my sense of divinity, to my sense of personal power, to my sense of freedom, the ease by which I walk in is so much greater. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes again, if you would, and take a deep breath. And bring to your mind's eye that situation or circumstance that is on repeat. And with an inquiry of curiosity, ask yourself the question, how might I desire this circumstance to be? What do I want in this area of life? What is the highest idea in this area for me? Take a deep breath. Keep your eyes closed if that's comfortable for you. Now ask yourself the question, who do I need to be? And what must I do to create this life that I desire? Who do I need to be? Take a deep breath, and when you're ready, open our eyes. I have a great desire for my life to move anywhere that I experience survival, to shift that into an experience of thriving. And imagine that that's actually possible, that survival is no longer necessary for you in a relationship, in your physical body, in your finances, in your place of work. You do not need to subscribe to a paradigm of survival. If you do, and so it is. So, Michael Beckwith will be here in a couple weeks, and I was reminded of this quote this past week. When we don't take ourselves too seriously, we will be lifted out of causative thought patterns that hook us into believing we are here simply to cope with existence and overcome challenges. Instead, we will thrive by delighting in the light that we are. You and I are not here to overcome challenges. When we walk on the planet and said, well, I was given that lot, it must be for my growth. In one sense, yes, that is true. But the great idea for your existence is not struggle. Imagine if you could walk through the circumstances and conditions of your life with curiosity. Imagine if you could invite over and over again, I am here to be the light of the world. I am here to thrive. I am here to dance and play through life. When you invoke the survival mechanism of the brain, very few creative solutions are available where you are. So I have 3 recommendations of how to shift this week. Move from drifting to committing. Drifting could be considered whatever you use to go unconscious. When you get scared and you want to go unconscious, do you blame? Do you critique? Do you drink? Do you sex? Do you shop? Any of those things are totally cool if you can stay awake while doing them. But if they're what you go to go unconscious, you might consider that's not in your highest good. To commit, to move from drift to commit, means actually to recommit over and over and over again. It is not a committing once. It means when I act out in relationship with another human being, I get back up and I recommit. When I act out in relationship to my finances, I get back up and I recommit. When I act out in terms of how I care for my body, I get back up and recommit. It's the recommitment part that most people throw away. It's June almost. You made some resolutions back in January. I got the letters sitting across the street. There was something that you said you intended. And you may have already said, oh, forget it, I'm too far gone. My invitation to you is to recommit. Stop the drifting and recommit. Second inquiry or invitation this week is to move from blaming to claiming. So something occurs in your life, something occurs in your place of work, something occurs in your family. Very easy and automatic to blame someone out there for why it is the way it is. The invitation instead is to say, how may I take 100% responsibility for this being exactly as it is? If I am in a relationship that has gone awry, rather than being at the effect of the person, how might I ask myself, in a loving, open, and curious way, how can I claim responsibility for my part in this? And finally, would you be willing to move from being right to being curious? I started with that so we could have 20 minutes of just gestation. Would you be willing to move from being right to being curious? Most adults walk on the planet very certain that their perspective is the right perspective. And when I show up to a conversation being right about my perspective, I've killed off any other possibility. I am already, when we are operating from being right and we're hanging on to it like a dog on a bone, we are already in a survival state because something out there is posing a threat to your ego construct, and it's not real. So my invitation as a community of people that says it wants to cause and create a world where unconditional love and conscious community reigns supreme, may we practice these 3 things this week. May we practice shifting from drifting to committing. May we shift from blaming to claiming, and may we shift from being right to being curious. That's the big game. And until we do that as a consistent practice and a way of being, any political leader, any system or structure is just a distraction. You're the one. All of us have shown up for you. So start working it. Show and prove. Many blessings.